No.
Say, Mr. Smith.
I think you did that job, Ian.
Oh, my goodness.
That seniority, you did it, Ian.
Well, we're gonna go on and get started. And I appreciate everybody that's on today. Appreciate Brother Tim making the introduction, and of course, the Saint doing his thing. I'm gonna be talking about a part of my Minnesota experience. I was invited up to actually talk about Black student protests at the University of Minnesota, 1960s, 1970s. So I thought I would go back and look at a few things that I've already done. And then at the very end of it, we'll talk about how all of this developed. But one of the things that I always like to deal with is who were we? Yeah. And who are we? Why were we so bold, Brother Tim?
Oh, my God.
And I said the reason we were so bold because we are the keepers of the fire and the preservers of the rage of Black people. We are who we were. Now, at Minnesota, we stood on the shoulders of Blacks who had preceded us in getting into the University of Minnesota. And I said, those Blacks were basically individualists, and they sought integration of the university on the university's terms.
Yeah.
When we arrived there in the mid-60s, minds had changed. The people who preceded us, they wanted to gain passage on the train without knowing the train's destination. I remember Du Bois made an analogy one time. He said his brother was standing on this ramp waiting for the train every day. And every day the train would just whisk on by him, would not stop. Finally, the train stopped one day. The brother got on the train. Once he got on the train, he thought about it. He said, wow, I've been trying to get on this train for a long time. He said, but I forgot to ask where's the train going. So we were a new breed. We came with the courage of our own convictions. We not only knew the destination of the train based upon the history of white supremacy, we jumped in front of the train and demanded that it come to a halt. We were willing to allow the school to continue, were unwilling to allow the school to continue on a course that excluded many of its citizens, including us. We demanded to be heard, and I know there are others who are here that the kids and people of the 1960s, that was the years of protest. We demanded to be heard, and we made it clear that the Afro-American Action Committee was willing to derail the train if its course was not altered. We had the audacity to indict the University of Minnesota and its administrators. We were bad. So bad, we're still bad. We believed, we stood and we spoke. We came with nerd juice. As many of you know, mine started here in Birmingham. Birmingham was a different place. So I introduced myself to the University of Minnesota. I simply said, I am Horace Hunter from Birmingham, Alabama, a veteran of the Vietnam era. I went to the University of Minnesota after serving in the United States military. Like the Black veterans of previous American wars, those of my generation refused to accept traditional indignities suffered by our people. When I got to Minnesota, it was a different veneer, it was a different atmosphere. People didn't speak. In the South, we spoke to each other. We knew each other. We held hands. But that was not the case at Minnesota. It was not until I met this sister named was Rose Freeman from Greenwood, Mississippi. And it was obvious that our Black Southern upbringing, her stint in the movement and mine in the military, had prepared two kindred spirits to struggle on the home front and speak truth to power. The U had a liberal veneer masking the underlying white supremacy that it supported. There was just a few Black students, few Black faculty, few administrators, one course that related to the Black experience. AAAC spoke to each of those deficiencies and challenged the university's school songs proclamation that it was a beacon bright and clear. We took issue with that. So, my being invited back to the university to speak, I am simply going to start by talking about how the movement was started in the mid-60s. In 1960, Strap, who was the Student for Racial Progress, they led the efforts toward racial equity and justice at the University of Minnesota. Ida Elam, Scotty Stone, and Lester Cannon were among the student leaders. In 1967, Rosemary Freeman enrolled at the university and immediately joined the leadership team of Strap. Ida and Rose were from Greenwood, Mississippi, and had worked in SNCC with Fannie Lou Hamer during their teen years. During 1967, a discussion developed about what's in a name. This resulted in Strap becoming the African American Action Committee, or AAAC. In April 1968, as a result of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., AAAC issued 7 demands to the university administration. The 2 most prominent demands were the reestablishment of the MLK Scholarship Fund, and the second was development of the Department of African and African American Studies. You notice I said department, not program. There's a difference in the setup. The demands that we had issued to the university lay dormant until January 1969, when AAAC reissued 3 of the demands and took action when they failed to receive positive responses. The Moore Hall takeover. Moore Hall is where the Bursar's office was located. It was the heart of the university. All the business taken here. It's in the administration building. The takeover was the consequence of the university's failure to address the demands that I previously spoke about. During the takeover, negotiations with the administration lasted most of the night, recessed, and resumed the next morning. By noon of that second day, AAAC left Moore Hall with an assurance from the university administration that the two previously mentioned demands, as well as agreeing to financially assist in the support of our proposed National Black Student Conference. Success was forthcoming due to the consistent work on campus and our strong attachment to the Black communities in North and South Minneapolis and the Silverdale area in St. Paul. It was reported that some white students were incensed at Black students having the audacity to take over Moore Hall. Our refrain was that maybe they now had a glimpse of what it must be like for Black people to have been locked out of America for the past 300 years. With such juices being concocted and consumed by us, it is great wonder that we ever relinquished Moore Hall. Or have we? As I was going through this, three people came to mind, and three of these people, they are scholars, in fact, that all of us will know their names. But they sort of encapsulized the Black struggle generally, and the Moore Hall takeover specifically. W.B. Du Bois, relating to the era of Reconstruction, said, "We fell under the leadership of those who will compromise truth in the past to control peace in the present and guide policy in the future." He was talking about the leadership during the Reconstruction period. And we know that Reconstruction lasted for a mere 12 years, in effect. It did not last very long. It was the first time that Black people, Black men particularly, would be recognized as human beings and were given the right to vote. But I always say, anytime somebody give you something, they can take it away at any time. And we're seeing that happening even today as we speak. The second person was Lerone Bennett. Many of you know Lerone Bennett has been a historian, very well known, wrote a book entitled Before the Mayflower. And he also wrote consistently for Ebony magazine. But he made a statement saying that American history has been a series of approaches to and retreats from a Black reality. Now, we know that the 1850s, in 1850, there was a Fugitive Slave Act passed. And that Fugitive Slave Act deputized all white people to be able to return any Black person to slavery if they felt that that person was a runaway slave. It was, and of course, that did not sit well with most of us, with most Black folks. 1857, well, prior to 57, Dred Scott made a decision that he was going to consider himself a free man. And he took it to courts. And the courts ruled against him. In fact, Judge Taney made a very famous statement saying that white men would
The
not—
Black man, excuse me,
Go ahead, say it for me.
he said that a Black man had no rights that a white man was obligated to acknowledge.
Was bound to respect. That's correct. So, showing that movement back and forth from reality to non-reality. The third person was Vincent Harding, and I've talked about this all the time, and I think this is very, very significant. He raised questions in addition to making certain statements. But he raised the question, how in the midst of such death and suffering How could we find so much strength to love, so much determination to live, fight on, and to be free? He goes further to say, in permanent and grueling exile, how could a people dance and create songs and fashion and art? Factors to hope. There are so many children in the land of our captivity, such post dehumanization and humiliation. How and why did we become the nation's foremost champion of human freedom and social justice, creators of many of its most native rhythms of life? And what now is our future and this nation's destiny if those costly, creative Black visions of hope, long nurtured in the fires of persecution, could be broken and bastardized or meanly forgotten in a ruthless and unprincipled process of Americanization? Man, that is a mouthful, more than a mouthful. But he's raising those questions. I simply end this by saying, well, the stances of 3 or 4 mentioned scholars and the likes of Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Fannie Lou Hamer, among others, will agree with me that the responses to the statements and answers to the queries sit in the same room, in this room today, and many other rooms of similar makeup. The answers are appearing not magically, but through consistency, courage, creativity, and unified efforts between students, faculty, staff, community, workers, and others who truly believe in equity and justice for all. I was thinking of this a couple nights ago, about 3 o'clock in the morning, and the Lord woke me up and told me to look in my head. He put something there. And I decided to get up. I got up at 3 in the morning. I penned this little poem. And this is the way I'll end this. I said, my people have struggled through the graveyard of time to reclaim that we know what is truly divine. Amnesia set in to aid the crime of destruction and burial of a glorious mind. Overcoming the loss of an ancient past, memory is a trait that will forever last, even when covered and distorted through the ages. Up, you mighty race.
Right.
It's printed on all pages. From the Haya people of East Africa to Tuskegee Airmen, from the resurrection of the hidden figures of Nasser, back to the wonders of the Dogon and their castles. Yes, it is just the tip of the iceberg, but it truly matters.
Amen.
Thank you for listening.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
Dr.
man,
Huntley. Any comments, questions? Greg, you got one?
Got his hand up.
Unmute yourself.
All right, can you hear me? Yeah. All right, Dr. Huntley, I'm going to play devil's advocate with you, Q, because most of these people won't have any perspective. So I'm going to ask you some questions. First, I'd like a brief description of the University of Minnesota. Where exactly in Minnesota were you? And what was the relationship of the University of Minnesota to the tiny, because I've been doing a little research here as I listen to you, tiny African-American community in Minnesota. Even today, Minnesota is no more than about 7% Black. It's 200 and there are 274,412 Black people in Minnesota, and 115,826 of them live in either St. Paul or Minneapolis. So I want to know what made you all go and become so militant toward the University of Minnesota. I mean, they'll be like, there were no Black folk for us to discriminate against. So where did this?
I got the gist of what you're asking. We didn't go to Minnesota to become militant. We were militant before we got there.
Okay.
And militancy, let me explain that. Militancy was any time that any Black person simply demanded the same things that everybody else had without having to struggle for it, you know. And we had, and we were in Minneapolis, St. Paul. The population at that time at the university, out of 40 some odd thousand students, there were 87 Black students.
Okay.
So,
so there was not much outreach to that community.
However, there was a community there. There was a Black community in North and South Minneapolis and in St. Paul in the Selby-Dale area. That was very active. They were people from other places, basically. I met one brother whose name was Bill English. Bill was the director of the Savannah Community Center, where Barbara and I volunteered and worked with the kids of South Minneapolis. Mahmoud El Khati was the education director at the Way Community Center in North Minneapolis. And he would travel the cities and lecture on Black history. I remember the first time that he was scheduled to come to Savannah, they told me he was going to be there and he's going to be talking about Black history. I said, well, I don't need that. And the guy, why don't you need it? I said, well, I already know Black person history. I'm Black. But when Mark started to talk, I realized that I didn't know anything about us. I knew what had happened in Birmingham, Alabama. I knew from my grandmother, Annie Scarborough, things that we should do and should not do. But I didn't know, I'd never heard of John Hope Franklin or Lerone Bennett, even though Lerone Bennett was probably more noted in the Black community than John Hope Franklin. John Hope Franklin was he wrote the first scholarly work on African American history. You know, not the first scholarly work that Black folks wrote, because that was Du Bois. But you're absolutely right. There were very few Black folk in Minnesota. And the ones that were there, they told us, the ones that were from the South, that they didn't have any problems in Minneapolis until we arrived.
Now, just that's second and last question for now. On a lighter note, because one of my line brothers did his dental residency in St. Paul.
Okay.
And he said, team, human beings ain't supposed to live in that kind of cold. He said, so I want to know how, and he grew up in Grambling, Louisiana, which is even colder than Birmingham. So I want to know, how did you adapt?
Okay. That's a good question. Let me tell you how I adapted. Whether I adapt. But when finishing high school, my girlfriend, who became my wife, and 11 other students in my homeroom class that were known in high school was going to Tuskegee. And I was supposed to have been one of those that went, but I found out that my mother couldn't afford to send me to Tuskegee. So I told her, well, if I can't go to Tuskegee, I ain't going nowhere. So I joined the Air Force to see the world. They sent me to Grand Forks, North Dakota. I spent 3 years,
No one.
9 months, and 10 days. So when I left North Dakota, I went to Minnesota. It was like going to
It was
Florida.
warmer. Yeah, it's warmer. Cause Brett used to say, my God, it's even colder in Duluth. He would say, he say as cold as Minneapolis was, where they have skin alerts and tell people you can't go outside with any exposed skin. He said in Duluth
That's right.
would be even damn cold.
We
So-
have people come from Alaska, from Thule, Greenland, and so they've never witnessed anything like the weather in North Dakota.
Mhm.
So I was going to the beach when I went to Minneapolis.
All right.
I got a question for you. I was, listening to the
boy.
news, Howard University. I didn't know about the letter. Maybe some of y'all knew about the letter that the Trump administration had sent to Howard. But when I heard about the letter, only thing I heard at first was that they wanted to tell them what to do about certain issues, certain things and about the demonstration. And it brought to my attention, Doc, when you mentioned one thing, you said, you're talking about a department of Black history, and it's a difference between departments. When I went back and reread the letter, on that letter, the Asian department at Howard, Black American department at Howard, the Indian department at Howard, all those departments were to be taken over by the federal government, and they were gonna design those departments. They were gonna be controlled what they taught.
Is this recent?
This, the other day when I read it, recent, this is what Howard did. That's why Howard said, no. So when he said department, that's the first thing went through my mind. You have to ask for the right thing. See, you can't get rid of, you can't let people take over that. But this is what they wanna do. And look, here's the point, you all. Look at what they had to do to get that in the institution. They had to demonstrate, they had to fight for it, to get that department at the University of Minnesota.
You had to really just take control of your destiny.
Yeah.
And that's what we were attempting to do.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, of course, this was at the height of the movement. The civil rights movement had gone on, and Dr. King was, the person most noted at that time. But of course, that was Malcolm X and other folk who were more demanding than Dr. King. And so there was always this ability to either follow one or the other, or follow both, because both were looking basically for the same kinds of things. So we had Dr. King to come to Minneapolis and speak at the university. In fact, prior to then, when Barbara graduated at Tuskegee, Dr. King was the commencement speaker. And I happened to have been there, although we had just gotten married, and my supervisor told me, don't take 30 days when you go to get married. I said, I need 30 days. He said, you're gonna wanna go back for Christmas. I said, well, no, I'm not. He was right. I had to go back, so I went back, came back to Birmingham for Christmas, and it was AWOL. AWOL. When I got back to the base, the first sergeant had written me a note, put it on my pillow. And so as soon as I read that note, to come to his office. And I did, and he said, you've been to Birmingham? I said, no, sir. I've been downtown. I didn't go. He said, no, you didn't. And he was right. He knew exactly because the person that worked for him, that's what I went with. So, this whole question of, going to different places and why you go to different places. I lost my place, so what was that question?
But Birmingham and Martin Luther King.
You went
Oh, I went AWOL because that's the only way that I could get back to see Barbara that time, but I've had another 6 months to do in North Dakota. And then we went on to Minneapolis. We met in Minneapolis after she finished up.
Yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't quite grasp in how it was a lot of, it's just like all of us here now. Everybody had a different opinion about who we gonna follow. You had the non-violence people, then you had the people who wanted, they were just through with non-violence. You had all of that going on during the struggle. But like Doc was saying, when you demonstrated, when they demonstrated and locked down that institution, that's to get them to just make a Black History Department. But look at what these people are trying to do now. They're trying to roll. They said, we ain't got to get rid of the department, but we gonna tell you what to teach.
Yeah, well, that's what they were.
Yeah, that's-
To do that.
That's crazy. I see two hands up. Greg, I'm gonna ask Al to go first and then you.
Yeah, Dr. Huntley, in your book, the last part of your book, you talked about recurring theme. So compare that time when you first went to Minnesota to today.
That is a recurring thing. Yeah, that's a good question, Alfred. We often have looked at the civil rights era as being that period when change took place, and it did, not denying that. It did take place at that particular time. Just as the Dixiecrats had formed in 1948 in Birmingham, Alabama, to deal with the question of the integration of the military, and those Dixiecrats would carry the date for them at that particular time. They were simply preparing. We often talk about the project 2025. I consider being project of 1865. And they had been attempting all of that time to do what they seemingly have gotten a foothold on today. Yeah. They have made a determination that they're going to control. You know, in 1901 Alabama Constitution, it states that we have determined that white supremacy will be the law of the land, and they put it in writing. It's in the country, it's still there, you can read it. Now, because of Trump and his boldness, they simply picked that up and continued it to its logical conclusion. What they're saying when they say they want to teach, or tell us what to teach, that means we have, our destiny is in their hands and not in our hands. So there's much to do about the Reconstruction era and how that passed on, and it became something different. It turned into Jim Crow in the Plessy versus Ferguson decision. We can see the same things that are happening today. It's very similar to that. But one of the things that we've always said is we're not going back. And we will struggle. But now, you see, it is not just black folk that is under his foot. It is the country as a whole. But we have had experience in this venue. And we know how to deal with that. Now, that does not mean that all of us have had this same experience, but we have had experiences with this particular effort that is going on at this time.
All right, Greg, we appreciate your patience.
Dr. Huntley, couple of things. Your first statement about it being a carryover from the plan that was put in place in 1865. I agree wholeheartedly. And from 1865 until 1914, okay, or 1912, there was this slow creep. It was only when white supremacy found its public champion in Woodrow Wilson. Because see, he was the first president from Reconstruction to the end of it and through to the 20th century who was openly a white supremacist. Resegregated the civil service, showed Birth of a Nation at the thing, lobbied Princeton not to let black students in. So in Trump, this slow creep over the last 61 years, the time of my life, from 1964 until now, there's been this slow creep. And now, in Donald Trump, white supremacy has found a new champion. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing I would ask is, given the fact that it could be argued, you said the Dixiecrats came to Birmingham in 48, but they walked out of the Democratic convention because the young mayor of Minneapolis, Hubert Humphrey, had managed to insert civil rights planks into the 1948 platform. And so I say that to point out that if I'm a fine specimen of young Minnesota white manhood in 1966, I'm like, look, the vice president of the United States has been an advocate for you people since he was the mayor of Minneapolis. Why are you taking this out on us? Because there's going to be some 19-year-old who's going to ask you this. There's going to be some 19-year-old that's going to ask you this. His name going to be Sven Jurgensen.
In 1964, we don't have to take it to the president. 1964, when the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party had established that organization in Mississippi. And it was basically an egalitarian attempt, because blacks and whites voted to seat Fannie Lou Hamer and the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. The main Democratic Party was made up of Stennis, George Wallace, and Hubert Humphrey. And they had at that time the authority to make some of what was wrong to make it right. They chose to do the opposite. And I always say that this thing that we have with white supremacy and all could not have gotten to this point if some of those folk who were supposedly our friends, if they in fact had stood up against what they knew was wrong. But they would not do that. I'm just
working you out, team.
I understand. Hey, and I love every minute of it.
Just-
Any
One
other
thing
questions?
too, guess what was on the, Fannie Lou Hamer's, the banner that they had, you remember? It was black,
In 64 or 68?
64.
Black Panther,
Oh, yeah, well, see,
they had that Black Panther on
see,
there.
the Black Panther, that's a good story anyway, because SNCC went into Mississippi and came into Alabama, and they established, helped to establish the Lowndes County Freedom Organization. And their emblem was the Black Panther. Said, pull the panther and go home. And that became the symbol of resistance in the movement at that time. And the Black Panthers, the Black Panthers for Self-Defense, that established in Oakland, California,
Yes,
they actually got permission from the Black Panther Party in Lowndes County, Alabama, to utilize the Black Panther as theirs, but they became the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. And they did not necessarily believe in the nonviolent portion of the movement.
I got one more
And
thing.
then, just a footnote, in that Black Panthers symbol, I understand, came from Clark Atlanta's symbol of the Panthers.
Right, that's right.
One last thing. Up to date, two things. We found out that we had a meeting today, Doc and I, with a teacher.
All right.
And, I found out something you all, I don't know if you all, some of you church members might have knew this. Let's see if I'm saying this right. During the pandemic, I did not know that she had established a school here in this building. You knew about it? We didn't know they had a school that went a whole year
Oh, good.
right here in this building
Right.
during the pandemic.
Hmm.
And we didn't know about it till,
So
I didn't know about today when we talked with her. And they educated the kids, that they educated the kids for a whole year during the pandemic. And she said they did it because a lot of the kids could not learn virtually.
Mhm.
So they brought them in here and taught them right here, 6th Avenue.
Wow.
And ain't nobody said nothing about it to the day.
That needs
So
to be
That's
recognized.
information that needs to
See,
become
that's
a part
something
of
to
the
be
history.
part of the history of this church.
Mhm.
Plus, we've got another meeting with her, we're gonna partner with her too on some things.
Good.
Last but not least, the other day I woke up. I always get up about 4 o'clock in the morning, look at the news. Stop eating them greens at night.
And potatoes,
I saw on the
and
news
ribs.
that the keynote speaker at the University of Alabama.
Oh,
Oh, God.
Wait, let me finish. So anyway, the wife don't get up till later on. I didn't want to tell her because I knew she had just started Mitch and then Ray, she had just started easing back to it, beginning to like Alabama.
Alabama.
When I told her that he was gonna be the keynote speaker at the University of Alabama, I had to go outside. She started speaking an unknown tongue. It was X-rated all up and down the line. Let me show something. And then when I went back in there, she said, they could have got Coach Mitchell and his wife to speak. She got Ray and his wife to speak. She just could not, and it's hard for me to grasp the things that she was saying, but I mean, I don't know if you feel like I do. But I wouldn't want somebody with a 34 count felony. A grifter to
Yeah,
speak at my commencement.
yeah, it's outrageous,
Here's what one person
to
said.
say the least.
Let me show you what, one white guy was on that, guess what he said? Now, it was his reasoning why he didn't want him there. He said he didn't want him there because of that student that got put in jail.
Mhm.
I got a bunch of them. 34 counts.
Yeah,
So Ray, we gonna make a thing, you and your wife and Brother Mitchell and his wife, y'all can be our keynote speaker at University of Alabama.
yeah. The president is outgoing. He's out of office in June. So maybe he didn't particularly care much about the speaker. And I'm sure the politicians like the governor and that Katie Brett influenced this decision.
And both of the senators.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, influenced the decision and
Come on,
It's-
man, you can't get by that, something ain't right.
no,
Well, it's my understanding that he is not to be the keynote speaker for the commencement, but
Yeah.
for at the night before, and that
Yeah.
people will pay. It's a paid event to hear him speak.
it's the day before, and it's the whole week is commencement activities. And he's at this honors convocation ceremony, baccalaureate ceremony.
Oh my goodness.
And
You fix that.
And I don't think the tickets are for sale. I think they're for security purposes, giving them to the students and their families primarily. But it's an awful thing that the university has done.
Think about it.
Yes, yes.
It recapitulates all of that history back to the university's beginning when they had slaves, they owned
Thank you.
slaves. And slaves built, certain buildings on campus, including the president's mansion.
but you know, Ray, I would not give the president a pass.
I'm not giving them a pass,
Because
I'm just
if he's
saying,
leaving in June, that's even more reason for him
It's in
to
the
go against that.
but if you meet the guy,
Anyway,
his personality is not that outgoing.
Uh,
He's an
hey, what you said a
engineer
few
by
minutes ago
trade.
about the good folks not saying nothing.
Mhm.
The letter from the Birmingham jail, that Martin Luther King wrote,
Yeah,
he implored the people, sitting around here not saying nothing, and letting this stuff go on.
Well, the young
Gentlemen,
people-
I would say, I have to say, these people are showing us again who they are.
Again.
This is who they are.
Oh, and they
One
have
in
not
three.
changed.
And the numbers say 45% of our unmelanated brethren in Alabama are bigots, if not out and out white supremacists. And they like Trump's rhetoric. Trump says the things that they wish they had the cojones to say, okay, publicly, out in the open. And these people live in a bubble, and they've lived in a bubble, and they have to stay in that bubble because see, if 44% of them hold those execrable views, the so-called decent ones, whom I call complicit, have to admit that they people, they uncles, they brothers, they mamas, they brother-in-laws, they uncles are foul people. If you voted for Trump, a candidate endorsed by the Ku Klux Klan,
My Lord.
you can be a loving father, grandfather, friend, brother. You just don't like black folk. And if that's the case, you are mean, and it's two words that begin with M and F. Because that's the truth. Now we have to stop looking for a rationalization to forgive these people. We can forgive them after they made to acknowledge their perfidy.
Greg, Greg, this is Dolores. We can forgive them. But
After,
okay, but this is what I see. This is what I see. I know I heard what I think it was Ray that said it. I'm not sure because my mind was going somewhere else too. But yes, the man is coming to University of Alabama. I don't care if he's speaking for $5 or $5,000 or $5 million. If you let that kind of man on the campus, you still a George Wallace.
yes,
You haven't changed. For
yes.
whatever reason you letting him on there, you still back there where you were back there in the 40s, 50s, and the 60s. You haven't changed.
You tell
For
them
whatever reason you let him on there, whether it's the money or whatever. We have to be careful. We old folks like me, 80 years old, we have to be careful that we don't pretend like we don't understand what's going on. It's still there. That hate is still there. And
Yes.
if we Dolores and we Ray and we Huntley, I'm not saying that we are doing this, but if we are making excuses for them, we're gonna end up right back where we were in the 40s, 50s, and the 60s. And our kids, they don't know no better, some of them.
You
So
got
we
to
need
meet
to
these
work
people
with
with
them.
their energy because they on a mission.
Hey, and you know what? That devil can be as strong as we Christians. If we sit here and make excuses for them having that man down there in Tuscaloosa, and anywhere else he goes and spread that garbage that he has, then we are sick in our heads. I'm gonna slow down because I don't want my pressure to go up.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have just seen Sister Brown and her sister-in-law. Okay, because if she was here, she'd be amen, and I'm channeling my mama. Okay.
Here's something I want to share with you all too. Let's deal with parents.
Before you share, Sister Rose, you are still in charge, but don't cut it off. Let it run for a while. He just told me that after we end our program here, then it has to boot up or something. So just hold it, just let it run for another 15 minutes.
I will.
Let me share something with you about these tariffs, y'all. The other day I was listening to somebody, I think it was Bloomberg or somebody, and they was talking about tariffs. The guy gave me this example. He said that we're gonna be in a situation with tariffs when it comes to insurance. So I said, I got to listen to this because I couldn't understand what he was talking about. I didn't see what tariff got to do with insurance. That's what he told me. He said that he said that the auto parts from overseas, not only the auto parts from overseas, but even in the junkyards are gonna go up. He said when those parts go up, that makes it more expensive for you to fix your car. Which make it more expensive for your insurance to do it. He said there's a possibility that our insurance could go up $300. So what one man is destroying the whole fabric of the economic fabric of this country.
Not only this, of the world.
The world. And we have to say that what we've been talking about. We just can't put it on him. In the Constitution, it states that the president can only take charge of, I don't know how it goes, but the only way he can do it is it got to be some sort of national emergency. Congress, which is controlled by the Republicans, could put a stop to it today. They could stop this terror thing today. Today giving him carte blanche with everything he wanted to do. So it's gonna be rough. We don't know how it's gonna turn out, but y'all can.
Brother Brown.
Yes, sir, brother.
Yes.
We put a lot of emphasis on Trump, But what's going on, someone, Horace mentioned it earlier. What Trump is doing, the Republican Party is doing, started back in the 60s with the Southern strategy. So what's going on now, Trump put the Southern strategy on steroids. Same thing with the waterworks. They started working on the waterworks as soon as they lost their majority and moved out of Birmingham. So this is just part of the process. Here's another thing. I don't know whether y'all want to accept this or not. They said that the Bible say, I think in the Bible say that when God kicked the devil out of heaven, he took a third of the angels with him. And no matter what Trump does or what he has done in the past, he gonna always have about 30% of the people on his side.
Absolutely.
I'm more.
And here's another thing. We might as well get ready for this. See, Black people are so anxious for white people to accept us.
Oh, praise the Lord.
Just a few couple of years ago, we was running around here talking about post-racism. Now we sitting here and they trying to deny all the rights we've had, what Horace was talking about back in Minnesota, all those rights now are on the chopping block. So we
a mouthful, Alfred. Alfred, you saying a mouthful, but people don't hear what you're saying and what Holly is saying too. We don't understand that we try so hard to be like those white people. You won't admit it. You won't admit it. You and me. With that straight hair.
I would say this, Auntie. Here's the truth. My study of history, and Dr. Huntley is a history person too, is that Occidental people don't respect you till you fight them. There's a reason the Japanese are the only ones that get respect from them, even though they lost. There's a reason for that. I don't think the guy who was the Klegel of the Mississippi Ku Klux Klan that ordered the murder of Sam Bowers, his business was down in the Black section of Laurel. He owned a vending machine company. And he used to take pride in pointing out that, you see, I can put my property down there amongst them N-words and it go unmolested. It's a test, and he pointed to that as a reason for why we were a lower people. See, the Irish would have burned it down. They would have burned it down no matter, we don't care if you come through here and burn down ours, and we don't care how many of y'all that you hang, we gonna burn it down. Now, I'm not advocating that thing, but I do think it says something. Okay? Now, I'm not advocating going out in the streets, but until we meet these people with that same energy, Uncle, when y'all went down there and faced down them guns in Selma and other places, they knew, oh, they waking up.
And stop buying their products.
That they prepared to die. Because it's the only thing they respect. They don't believe in the only a handful of them truly embrace the ethics of their religion.
Oh, yeah.
The Crusades were started to get European Christians to stop killing each other. Give them somebody else to kill. And so the Pope pointed them at the Holy Land. Now that's historical fact. Am I lying, Dr. Huntley?
You know, the Lord made this whole universe through logical beings, logical things. You know, the sun comes up in the morning, it goes down in the evening. And we can count on that. That's logic. That's logical. When we start to talk about the way that people treat each other, we are totally illogical. It is totally illogical for us to still in this time and age to be talking about white supremacy. It should be gone and dead.
Yeah, some people
Right
say it's a
now.
mental illness.
That's right. So logically, we have to understand that we cannot deal with this from a logical standpoint because they are not dealing from a logical standpoint. So we want to thank everybody. It's been good, but we really need to move on because I got to get out, and I'm sure that there are others as well. But I really appreciate the questions that we've raised today, because that is the only way that we're going to come to a conclusion that we are not necessarily doing everything right ourselves. And that we have to know that there's certain things that we simply must just simply ignore, because what we have been taught to be who we are. And we've been taught to be who we are from somebody else's perspective. It's not to our advantage.
Yeah, well, Dr. Hunter, let me just jump in before you leave. We have another problem. There is a substantial amount of African Americans are fully on board with white supremacy. That's a problem that you cannot overlook.
Brother Hunt, call them what they are, the coons.
Okay.
They-
Well,
they-
you can call them coon, but see what it is.
the white man's ice is always colder.
Yeah, but see, their livelihood and their life is tied to the system.
Mhm.
And
So in order for them to survive, they're going to survive. They're going to do what he say do.
Well, living in this country, with all due respect, living in this country, when has our economic situation not been tied to white folk? We can't get away from white folk, and they can't get away from us. You
That's right.
cannot hold somebody in a ditch without lingering in it yourself.
And straight it with your hand.
But we gotta use logic, not this failed logic that has been used all along. We gotta use logic, because if we use logic, we would automatically come out of this thing. But we've not been able to do it, and I think that's what Greg is basically saying, is that there has to be some other way.
And
we have-
gentlemen, I just want to say, I am so honored to sit here with you all and listen to your stories. I didn't know until we started doing this that my uncle had been at Selma. Okay. And I so admire the fact that in the face of all this madness, you all are still looking for ways to move forward. It helps me, because as I've said to you all before, I go from despair to white hot rage. White hot rage.
And all of us do.
In closing, you all, we have some positive things that are going on. You know, we're gonna be meeting with our kids. So y'all get ready for that. And we also on YouTube. I'm not sure when it's on there. All our podcasts are on YouTube now. Pastors let us do that. So we want you all to ask some people to invite some folks and to come in. We'd like to discuss certain things with you. And we have a lot of things planned for our church and our schools and our children. So make sure you tune in, invite a guest, and we sure appreciate y'all.
All right, and thank you for coming.
The three of us don't know how to handle that thing over there.
So Rose, let it run.
I will.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We'll see you
All
next
right,
week.
see you.
All right, good evening. Okay.
You know what it went for that leader, I've been in.
Thank you, Dr. Huntley. Thank you,
Oh,
Doc.
Thank you, ma'am.
That was awesome.
That's
Yes,
good.
it was.
Oh, yeah, outside, I can give it to you, man, let the water out there.
And yo, we in the coldest
Mr.
rooms in the house.
Timothy Brown, don't forget to go by the drugstore. Timothy Brown. Made you a mess. I hear you laughing. You did. You woke them up. That was good what you said.
He told me to
You know.
bring it back.
What about the president?
Yeah. Yeah.
But he still doesn't need to be there at
I
all.
agree.
It's the wrong time for him to be there. It's taken away from those hardworking students. Yeah,
You
now who am I? Huh?
There's no reason none of us should agree. Huh? No, none of us black people should go see him or sanction what he's doing by being down there. You know, I don't
Mm-mm.
know. Maybe
A
just
lot of
me.
the kids,
Maybe
a lot
just
of the kids say they not going
huh?
a lot of the students not gonna participate in commencement now. You know, my granddaughter's down there.
Oh, oh, really? But
And
you know what? That's go on. She said, "What about?"
she told me that she was the one who told me that he's not speaking at the commencement itself, but that he's been doing a pay. You know, he's always after money. So people are paying to hear him. And maybe,
But
Ray
still,
said they have to have a ticket to get in, but I don't believe he
but
came down here for free.
no, he didn't. And just the idea the president let him come, period, puts a negative impact on me about the president. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, well,
You
I'm
gonna
glad
let
he's
somebody?
leaving.
Oh, the president. He
They
need
say
to
he's
leave.
leaving. He's leaving in June.
Well, he need to leave today.
He does. Yes, he does.
Because they let you know he's one too. He's one of them Ku Klux Klans. But you
Mhm.
know, Tuscaloosa has always been the headquarters of Ku Klux Klan. Did you know that?
I know. Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes.
So it hadn't changed, you know. When I used to work, I worked down there 13 years with them. They were the most racist people I've ever worked with. Tell me about racist. Oh my God. It took all I had not to get killed going and coming from down
Oh,
there.
I believe it. You remember how, I know you do, how country it used to be.
Yeah.
All those dirt roads and.
I do remember. But anyway, is someone else on here besides you and I? Because I see it say 3. So
Well,
I don't know who the other person is.
I think that the computer that's still on where they were, and then the two of us, I think that's what it is.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mhm.
But you know, I'm glad that Greg is in his 60s or whatever he is. I'm
Mhm.
glad to know that he has some common sense and maybe some more out there at his age group, then he can spread it. But and then my grandson Tyler, even though he's
Mhm.
whatever he is, he thinks like that, like we think. But you know, I wish we could get more younger people to come on these programs on Wednesdays when we have them. I don't know what it's gonna take to get them on them. I know some of them work. I know that's an excuse.
Right.
So I don't know whether we need to back it up to 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock,
Well,
or we need to have it on Saturday.
And 6 o'clock is gonna cut into Bible study.
By a Bible class. And then maybe sometime on Saturdays we need. I don't understand why we still won't have those kids come on Saturdays to the movies and popcorn. We missed that window one time,
Mhm.
but we still should. I don't know why we won't go back to that again and address having the popcorn and the movies again and grab them. You know, and if you get the kids, you're gonna get the parents and grandparents, some of them.
Right. Well, maybe when we find out what Dr. Huntley and Tim talked to, how that meeting went today, get something.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I hope you're right, but knowing what I know about Letitia, they ain't got
Don't
no.
hush, 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 hush.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
you on the.
Okay, I'll be quiet. We'll talk on our own telephone. But anyway, I'll talk to you later, okay?
All right. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.